The fluorescent lights of Century 3 Mall never stopped humming. December 1985, and the 15-year-old working his first shift at Waldenbooks stood behind the register, watching shoppers flow past like a river of winter coats and shopping bags. The mall sprawled across 3 levels of Pennsylvania's suburban ambition, and right now, 2 weeks before Christmas, it pulsed with that specific chaos of American consumer celebration. My name tag said Jeff in neat black letters on white plastic. My shirt was the required button-down, tucked into jeans that Mom had ironed that morning, even though I'd insisted it wasn't necessary. My hair was feathered in that Steve Perry from Journey style every guy was attempting, held in place with enough Aquanet to survive nuclear winter. 15 years old, 3 weeks into my first real job, earning $3.35 an hour to organize books and smile at customers and pretend I knew where every title in the store lived. The mall was its own universe in 1985. Century 3 sat at the intersection of Route 51 and Clairton Boulevard, a beacon of commerce visible from the highway. Its massive parking lots filled with Oldsmobiles and Buicks and Ford LTDs. 3 floors connected by escalators that seemed futuristic, even though they'd been there since the mall opened in '79. Anchor stores at each end, Gimbel's on one side, Kaufmann's on the other, with 100 smaller stores in between, selling everything from pretzels to diamonds. Waldenbooks occupied prime real estate on the 2nd floor between Chess King and the Piercing Pagoda. The store smelled like paper and possibility, rows of books organized by category, bestsellers facing out on special displays. Stephen King's latest, Danielle Steele. Tom Clancy's Red October that every dad seemed to want, the Garfield collections that moved faster than we could stock them. And in the back corner, the section I'd been warned about, the magazines behind the partial barrier, the ones with the plain covers that teenage boys pretended not to notice. My shift started at 4 and ended at 9. 5 hours that felt both eternal and instantaneous. School let out at 2:30, which gave me barely enough time to catch the 54C bus from Baldwin High to the mall, grab something from the food court if I'd saved enough lunch money, and clock in. The time clock was an actual mechanical device, heavy and official, the card sliding in with a satisfying ka-chunk that marked you present and accountable. The manager was Mrs. Kowalski, maybe 40, with reading glasses on a chain and the kind of no-nonsense efficiency that came from managing retail during the holidays. She'd hired me in November when the store put out a seasonal help wanted sign, had asked exactly 3 questions during the interview, and hired me on the spot when I'd correctly identified authors from their book spines. The job wasn't glamorous, mostly restocking, alphabetizing, helping customers find books they couldn't describe beyond, "It has a blue cover." But it was mine. The paycheck was the thing. Every Friday, Mrs. Kowalski would hand over a white envelope with your name on it, and inside was a check. A real check with your name printed on it, representing hours worked and money earned. My first check had been for $73.80 after taxes. I'd stared at it for 5 full minutes, this tangible proof that I'd traded time for money, that I was part of the economy now, a contributor rather than just a consumer. Dad had taken me to Mellon Bank to open a checking account, the banker treating me like a real person, giving me temporary checks and a register to track deposits and withdrawals. The act of depositing that first check, of seeing the balance update, had felt impossibly adult. $73.80. Not a fortune, but mine. Christmas music played constantly throughout the mall, piped through speakers that couldn't be escaped. Last Christmas by Wham! At least 3 times per shift, Madonna's Santa Baby cover, Paul McCartney's Wonderful Christmas Time that would burrow into your brain and live there rent-free. The songs created a soundtrack to the season, mixing with the general din of shoppers and the occasional crying child and the constant rustle of shopping bags. The mall attracted everyone during Christmas season. Families with kids lined up to see Santa on the first floor, the photo operation run with corporate precision. Teenagers congregated around the arcade near the food court, feeding quarters into Pac-Man and Donkey Kong and the new gauntlet machine that supposedly let 4 people play at once.
Older folks walked the mall for exercise, claiming the early morning hours before stores opened, moving in packs wearing matching tracksuits. Working retail meant observing humanity at its most stressed and most hopeful. The woman who came in looking for a specific book about roses for her mother, nearly crying when we actually had it in stock. The dad trying to find something his teenage daughter might like, completely lost, accepting my suggestion of a Judy Blume novel with the faith of the desperate. The old man who came in every Saturday, browsed for an hour, and bought nothing, but we all knew he was just lonely and the store was warm. My coworker Julie was 17, a senior at Baldwin, impossibly cool, with her Madonna-style lace gloves and her ability to talk to customers without seeming nervous. She'd been working at Waldenbooks since summer, knew the inventory like she'd memorized it, could recommend books based on the vaguest descriptions. She was dating someone who worked at Sam Goody, the record store 2 shops down, which seemed like the height of teen sophistication. Couples who worked at different mall stores, meeting on breaks, living intertwined retail lives. Break time meant 20 minutes in the mall's back corridors, the service hallways that connected stores and warehouses and break rooms, the hidden infrastructure that customers never saw. The break room was shared by multiple stores, a room with fluorescent lights and mismatched chairs and a fridge that probably violated health codes. I'd eat whatever I'd brought from home, usually a sandwich Mom had made, a can of Coke from the machine, maybe a bag of chips from the mall's Giant Eagle grocery store. Other retail workers filled the break room during overlapping breaks. The guy from Radio Shack who was obsessed with the new Nintendo Entertainment System, the girl from Casual Corner who always had her Walkman on, listening to cassettes she'd recorded from the radio. The old guy from Sears who'd been working retail since before any of us were born, dispensing advice nobody asked for about customer service and life. The food court was the mall's beating heart. Orange Julius with its frothy orange drinks that tasted like melted creamsicles, Sparrow with its pizza slices bigger than your head, Chick-fil-A with its waffle fries and the distinctive red and white aesthetic, Roy Rogers, Arby's, a Chinese place that served everything in those white takeout boxes with the wire handles. The smell was a mixture of competing cuisines, grease and sweetness, and salt combining into the signature scent of mall dining.
I'd buy dinner from the food court on nights when I worked late, using money I'd earned, making adult decisions about nutrition versus cost versus what actually tasted good. Usually this meant Sparrow pizza and a large Coke, the total coming to around $3, the reasonable trade for sustenance and the satisfaction of self-sufficiency. The mall was decorated for Christmas with the kind of excess that defined the 80s. Garland everywhere, fake snow sprayed in corners, massive ornaments suspended from the ceiling that occasionally fell and caused minor panic. The centerpiece was a 3-story Christmas tree on the main floor, covered in lights and ornaments and topped with a star that sparkled under the mall's eternal fluorescent glow. Kids would stand and stare at it, this monument to holiday commercialism that somehow still felt magical. December meant the mall stayed open later, Monday through Saturday until 9, Sundays until 6. The extended hours were both blessing and curse. More shifts available, more hours to work, more money to earn, but also more time under fluorescent lights, more Christmas music slowly driving you insane, more customers asking if you had books you definitely didn't have. My motivation for working wasn't just general teenage desire for money. Christmas was coming, and Christmas meant gifts. And this year, I wanted to buy gifts myself instead of giving things Mom had bought and wrapped and I just signed the card. Real gifts, chosen and purchased with my own earned money, proving I was growing up, becoming someone who could contribute instead of just receive. The list was specific. Something for Mom, probably a book, maybe one of those Danielle Steele novels she devoured. Something for Dad, maybe a tool from Sears, though I'd need Julie's Sam Goody boyfriends advised on whether a wrench was a good gift or insulting. Something for my younger brother Mike, probably a Transformer, specifically Optimus Prime if I could afford it, because he'd been dropping hints since September. Something for Grandma. Slippers from Kaufman's maybe. Warm ones because her house was always cold. Each gift represented hours of work. The math was simple and brutal. $3.35 an hour minus taxes meant roughly $3 per hour take-home. A decent gift costs $15 to $20, 5 to 7 hours of work per person. My entire family required probably 40 hours of labor, assuming I bought modest gifts and got store discounts where possible.
But the alternative was unacceptable. Another Christmas of generic gifts signed with my name but chosen and paid for by parents who didn't have extra money anyway. Another year of being a child who received but couldn't give. 15 felt like the age where that had to change, where you started evening the balance, proving you understood the economics of family and love. The Saturday before my first paycheck, I'd walk the mall during my lunch break, scouting gifts, checking prices, doing reconnaissance. Sam Goody had cassettes for $7.99, albums for $9.99, the new CD players that cost $300 and represented the future of music. Spencer Gifts sold gag gifts and lava lamps and stuff that seemed cool until you actually bought it and brought it home. Kaufman's had everything from clothes to housewares, price tags that made my part-time wage seem inadequate. Gimbel's was having a sale on winter coats, the racks a rainbow of puffy insulation. The sheer variety of stuff available in Century 3 Mall was overwhelming. You could buy anything: books, records, clothes, food, jewelry, electronics, toys, furniture, luggage, pets from the pet store that probably shouldn't have been in a mall but was. The mall was America in microcosm. Capitalism's greatest hits. The promise that with enough money you could acquire happiness in object form. My shift that Thursday night was steady but not chaotic. The real rush wouldn't hit until the final week before Christmas, when desperation overtook planning and people bought whatever was left. I helped a woman find a cookbook for her daughter, restocked the horror section that was always getting ransacked by kids looking for Stephen King, rang up a guy buying $20 worth of calendars for office gifts, the transaction requiring me to count change twice because I was still getting comfortable with the register. The mall closed at 9. The process of closing the store was ritualized, counting the register, matching receipts to cash, filling out forms that tracked daily sales, vacuuming the carpet, straightening shelves that would be destroyed again tomorrow. Mrs. Kowalski supervised with practiced efficiency, checking our work, complimenting what deserved complimenting, correcting what needed correcting, getting us out by 9:30 so we could all go home.
The mall after closing was strange. Lights stayed on, but stores were dark. The crowds disappeared, but the music kept playing. Christmas songs echoing through empty corridors. Security guards patrolled, their walkie-talkies crackling with whatever security guards talked about. The cleaning crews emerged with their industrial equipment, maintaining the illusion of cleanliness that would last exactly until the mall reopened tomorrow. The bus stop outside the mall was covered, but cold. December wind cutting through the minimal shelter. The 54C ran every 30 minutes after 8 p.m., which meant waiting, stamping feet, watching breath form clouds, counting down minutes until the bus arrived and the warm interior and the ride back to reality. Home was a split level in Baldwin, the suburb south of Pittsburgh that was neither rich nor poor, just solidly middle. The house we'd lived in since I was 6, 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom shared by 4 people, a basement that flooded sometimes, a garage that Dad used as workshop space. The neighborhood was other houses exactly like ours, other families exactly like mine, other kids I'd grown up with navigating the same path from childhood to whatever came next. Mom was always up when I got home from work, sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of tea and a book, claiming she wasn't waiting up, but obviously waiting up. We'd talk about my shift, about customers, about nothing important, the daily download that parents needed and teenagers tolerated. Then bed, homework that should have been done earlier,
Sleep that came fast from physical exhaustion and teenage growth and the simple depletion of a day fully lived. Friday meant payday. Mrs. Kowalski handed over the envelope at the end of my shift. This week's check for $87.40. 40 hours worked, time transformed into money, the exchange that powered everything. I held that check with almost religious reverence, this proof of worth, this ticket to being someone who could buy gifts instead of just receiving them.
Saturday morning, Dad drove me to Mellon Bank. The teller knew me now, recognized me from last week's deposit, treated me with the casual respect given to regular customers. The check went in, the balance updated, the temporary checks in my wallet suddenly represented real buying power. $87 didn't seem like much in the abstract, but in the concrete reality of Christmas shopping at Century 3 Mall, it was possibility made tangible. The mall on Saturday morning before stores opened was quiet, just the walking clubs doing their laps, senior citizens in coordinated outfits moving at determined paces. I'd come early, before my 1 p.m. shift, armed with my list and my checkbook and the specific knowledge of exactly how much I could spend. The math was simple. $87 divided by 4 people equals $21.75 per person, assuming nothing was left over, which was fine because I'd have another paycheck next Friday. Mom's gift came first. Waldenbooks employee discount meant 10% off, which meant I could afford the hardcover Danielle Steele novel she'd mentioned wanting. $17 after discount, wrapped in paper from the gift wrap station near customer service, a bow from the pack Mom kept in the closet at home that I'd secretly borrowed. Gift 1, complete. Dad's gift proved more complicated than expected. Wandering through Sears on that Saturday morning, the tools section stretched out like a mechanical jungle. Wrenches and socket sets and things with names the 15-year-old couldn't pronounce. The Craftsman brand dominated, red handles and chrome metal, tools that promised lifetime warranties and American craftsmanship. Dad had Craftsman tools already, the kind he'd inherited from his father, tools that had built and fixed things for decades. The problem wasn't finding something Dad might use. The problem was finding something Dad didn't already have, something that said, "I thought about this," rather than, "I grabbed whatever was on sale." The salesman, an older guy with a Sears name tag reading Frank, seemed to sense my confusion without me saying anything. He'd probably seen 1,000 teenage boys standing in the tool department looking lost, trying to buy gifts for fathers who already owned everything practical.
Frank showed me a small flashlight that ran on rechargeable batteries, a new technology that seemed almost futuristic. The Ever-Ready brand, 1995, which pushed my budget but solved the problem of originality. Dad was always looking for flashlights, in the basement, in the garage, under the sink where pipes occasionally needed attention. This one charged by plugging into the wall, no disposable batteries required. Practical and novel at the same time. Perfect. The transaction at Sears required my temporary checks, the first time I'd actually written one in a store. The cashier examined it like I was trying to pass counterfeit currency, called a manager, verified the temporary checks were acceptable, finally processed the sale with the kind of skepticism that made clear she didn't trust 15-year-olds with checking accounts. The flashlight went into a Sears bag, gift-wrapped at customer service for an extra 50 cents that I paid because presentation mattered. 2 gifts down. Mike's transformer and Grandma's slippers remained. KB Toys sat on the first floor near the food court, a wonderland of childhood desire, organized into cramped aisles. The smell hit you immediately. New plastic and cardboard, and that particular scent of mass-produced toys. The store was packed with kids dragging parents, pointing at things, making demands that would or wouldn't be fulfilled, depending on parental patience and budget. The Transformers section took up an entire wall. Optimus Prime in his box, the artwork showing the truck transforming into the robot leader of the Autobots. $19.99, which was almost my entire remaining budget, but Mike had been obsessed with Transformers since the cartoon started. Had the smaller figures but dreamed of Optimus, had circled it in the Sears Wish Book catalog that appeared every year like a secular Bible of material desire. The decision point arrived quickly. Buy Optimus and have almost nothing left for Grandma, or buy a smaller Transformer and have money remaining. The math was simple, but the emotional calculation was complex. Which mattered more? Mike's Christmas morning joy or Grandma's gift? Could you measure love in dollars? Was it okay to prioritize one family member over another based on who would appreciate it more?
The young man stood in KB Toys holding Optimus Prime, running these calculations, feeling the weight of adult decisions. This was what earning your own money meant. Not freedom, but responsibility. Not unlimited possibility, but hard choices about resource allocation. Welcome to economics, kid. Welcome to adulthood. Optimus went into the cart. Mike would get his dream gift. Grandma would get something smaller. The decision made, the consequences accepted. The budget stretched to breaking. The checkout line at KB moved slowly. Parents negotiating with children, children crying about toys they couldn't have, the whole spectrum of want and need and disappointment playing out in real time. The cashier was a girl maybe 16, working retail like everyone else, running items through the scanner with practiced boredom. $21.47 after tax. The temporary check came out again, the same skeptical examination, the same manager call, the same eventual acceptance. 3 gifts purchased. Grandma remained. The budget situation was dire. $5.28 left from the $87.40. Grandma's slippers from Kaufman's cost at least $15 for anything decent. The math didn't work. The mission had failed at the budget planning stage, the rookie mistake of someone who'd never done Christmas shopping with their own money before. But walking past Spencer Gifts, inspiration struck. Spencer's was the store that sold everything weird, lava lamps and black light posters and gag gifts and things that seemed funny in the store but embarrassing at home. But they also sold normal things, hidden among the novelty items, and one of those things was those slipper socks, the fuzzy socks with rubber grips on the bottom that worked like slippers but cost less. Inside Spencer Gifts, the atmosphere was deliberately countercultural. Black lights made white things glow. Posters advertised bands and movies and attitudes. A small section in back had items that made teenage boys giggle and quickly look away. But near the register, a display of slipper socks in various colors, $4.99 per pair. Grandma liked blue. The blue slipper socks were soft and warm and practical and exactly $5.42 after tax, which meant using every remaining cent of this paycheck plus 14 cents from pocket change accumulated from lunch money and bus fare. The transaction cleaned out the checking account completely, left him with no buffer, no emergency funds, no safety net.
But the mission was complete. 4 gifts, purchased with money he'd earned, wrapped and ready for Christmas morning. The satisfaction was immense and immediate. This was what being 15 in December 1985 meant. Stretching your first paychecks to cover family obligations, learning economics through trial and error, discovering that providing for others felt better than providing for yourself. The bags from 4 different stores hung from both hands as the young man walked through Century 3 Mall toward Waldenbooks for his 1 p.m. shift. The mall was filling with Saturday shoppers, the aisles crowded, the stores busy, the whole commercial engine running at peak efficiency. Christmas music continued its endless loop. Bruce Springsteen's version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town that was somehow both traditional and rock and roll, perfectly embodying the 80s aesthetic. Lunch had to be skipped. No money left for food court purchases. The checking accounted zero until next Friday's paycheck. The young man ate the packed sandwich from home in the break room, drank water from the fountain, made do. This was fine. This was part of the sacrifice. You earned money, you spent it on others, you lived with the consequences. The afternoon shift at Waldenbooks moved quickly. Saturday was the busiest day. Endless customers looking for books, asking for recommendations, buying gifts, participating in the great American ritual of Christmas shopping. The young man rang up purchases, recommended titles based on vague descriptions, restocked shelves as fast as they emptied, existed in the flow of retail work. Julie worked the same shift, her Madonna aesthetic on full display, lace gloves, layered jewelry, hair teased and sprayed into submission. She was in her element during Christmas season, thrived on the chaos, could handle 3 customers at once while making each feel like they had her full attention. The young man watched and learned, studied her customer service techniques, tried to replicate her easy confidence.
The store was busy enough that Mrs. Kowalski brought out the reserve stock from the back room, boxes of bestsellers that had been held for exactly this rush. More Tom Clancy, more Stephen King, more Danielle Steele, the authors who moved units and kept bookstores profitable. The young man's arms ached from carrying boxes, his feet hurt from standing, his face hurt from smiling, but the time passed quickly when you stayed busy. A woman came in looking for a Bible for her grandson, something with large print because his eyes weren't good. They found one, King James Version, leather-bound, $22.95. The woman paid in cash, counted out exact change from a worn purse, hands shaking slightly with age or cold or both. She thanked him 3 times, like the service mattered more than it probably did, like he'd done something meaningful rather than just locating inventory. That was the thing about retail during Christmas. You were part of people's stories. The dad finding a book for his daughter wasn't just buying an object. He was trying to bridge a generational gap, to show he understood her interests, even if he didn't. The woman with the Bible was maintaining family tradition, passing down faith through physical objects. Every transaction carried weight beyond commerce. Break time came at 4. The young man took his 20 minutes in the back corridors, sitting in the shared break room with retail workers from other stores. The Radio Shack guy was there, eating McDonald's that smelled better than the packed sandwich. The casual corner girl had her Walkman on, nodding along to whatever cassette she was playing. The Sears veteran was reading the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, the paper folded to the sports section, probably checking Steelers scores. The TV in the break room was on, showing the local news at 4. The anchors were KDKA's familiar faces, people who'd been delivering news for years, trusted voices in every Pittsburgh home. They talked about the Steelers' playoff chances, about Christmas shopping predictions, about a snowstorm coming midweek that might complicate holiday travel. The TV was a Zenith, one of those heavy console models with the fake wood grain, probably older than most of the people in the break room.
Someone had brought in a bag of Christmas cookies from home, left them on the counter for communal consumption. The young man took 2, a sugar cookie shaped like a tree and a chocolate crinkle that left powder on his fingers. Free food was never refused in retail break rooms, the unwritten rule of service industry workers sharing what they had. The 5 o'clock hour brought a different crowd to the mall. People coming after work, still in their office clothes, tired but determined to shop. Men in ties loosened from a day at the office, women in skirt suits and heels. The professional class mixing with the teenagers and families, everyone participating in the same ritual of gift acquisition. A regular customer came in, an older man the young man had helped before. He was looking for a specific book about World War II, something about the Pacific Theater. Waldenbooks had it in stock, a thick, hardcover, published by Random House, beautifully illustrated. The man bought it for his brother, who'd served in the Navy, explained the whole story, how they'd grown up in Pittsburgh, how his brother had enlisted in '43, how they'd been sending each other books for 40 years. These moments happened regularly in retail. Customers sharing their lives, their stories, their reasons for buying things. The young man listened, rang up the purchase, thanked the man genuinely because the story mattered, because the gift mattered, because retail was ultimately about humans connecting through objects. 7 o'clock meant the mall was still packed, but starting to thin slightly. The desperate shoppers were arriving, the ones who'd put off gift buying until now, who moved through stores with frantic energy. A woman came in asking for anything by Sidney Sheldon, didn't care which title, just needed something for tomorrow's office party. The young man grabbed one off the shelf. She paid and left in under 3 minutes. Transaction complete.
Mrs. Kowalski had ordered pizza for the staff, her weekly Saturday tradition during December. 2 large pizzas from Sbarro delivered to the store, everybody taking turns eating while maintaining coverage at the register. The young man ate 3 slices standing up, the cheese still hot enough to burn the roof of his mouth, washing it down with a Coke from the machine. This was dinner. This was fuel. This was the reality of retail work during holidays. The evening continued its rhythm, customers in and out, books purchased, gift wrap dispensed, the register drawer filling with cash and checks, and the occasional credit card slip that required manual imprint machines, sliding the card through, making 3 copies, the whole process taking longer than anyone wanted. By 8:30, the crowd was thinning significantly. Closing time approached. The ritual of end of day began, counting money, matching receipts, straightening shelves, vacuuming floors. Mrs. Kowalski supervised with her usual efficiency, checking work, providing guidance, keeping everyone moving toward the 9 p.m. closing. The young man's thoughts drifted to the gifts in his locker, the 4 bags from 4 stores representing 2 weeks of work. Christmas was 10 days away. He'd accomplished the mission, bought gifts with his own money, proved he could contribute. The satisfaction sat warm in his chest. Pride mixed with exhaustion, mixed with the deep understanding that this was what growing up felt like. The mall closed. The stores darkened. The Christmas music continued playing to empty corridors while cleaning crews emerged with their equipment. Security guards walked their routes, checking doors, maintaining order in the temporary abandonment. The bus ride home took 40 minutes. The 54C, making its stops through Pittsburgh's South Hills, picking up other retail workers ending their shifts, dropping them at corners near their homes. The young man sat by the window watching the city pass. Christmas lights on houses, decorations visible through windows, the whole region participating in the same seasonal celebration. Home was dark, except for the porch light Mom always left on. The house quiet. Everyone asleep except Mom at the kitchen table with her tea and book, waiting up like she always did. They talked briefly about his shift, about the pizza, about nothing important. Then bed, the gifts hidden in his closet, Christmas approaching with both excitement and the exhaustion of having worked for it.
Sunday meant church, another tradition maintained despite teenage reluctance. The Catholic Church on the Hill, St. Catherine's, where the family had attended since moving to Baldwin. Mass at 10, the priest giving the same homily about preparing hearts for Christmas, about remembering the reason for the season, about charity and love and faith. The young man sat in the pew between his parents, Mike fidgeting on Dad's other side. The 4 of them occupying their regular spot, 7 rows from the front on the right side. The church smelled like incense and old wood and the particular mustiness of buildings that had stood for decades. The stained glass windows filtered December sunlight into colored patterns across the floor. The organ played hymns everyone knew, but nobody sang well. After Mass, the parking lot became a social hub. Families talking, making plans, catching up on neighborhood news. Mrs. Henderson asking about Mike's grades. Mr. Thompson mentioning his transmission trouble and did Dad know a good mechanic. The Kowalskis, no relation to his boss, inviting everyone to their Christmas Eve party. The informal network of Catholic families in suburban Pittsburgh maintaining connections through weekly proximity. Sunday afternoon meant homework that had been neglected, geometry problems that made no sense, an English essay about a tale of two cities that was due Tuesday. The young man worked at the kitchen table, textbooks spread out, the TV on in the living room showing the Steelers game that everyone in Pittsburgh was watching or pretending to watch. Mike wanted to watch cartoons instead of football. The negotiation happened. Steelers game until halftime, then cartoons. A compromise that satisfied nobody but prevented outright conflict. This was family life in 1985, the constant negotiation of shared space and competing desires, and the complicated mathematics of fairness. Evening meant another shift at Waldenbooks, Sunday 5 to 9. The mall quieter than Saturday, but still busy with people squeezing in shopping between church and the work week. The routine was familiar now, 3 weeks into the job, the rhythm of retail becoming automatic. Clock in, check the schedule, stock shelves, help customers, exist in the flow.
The young man was getting better at recommendations. Customer service wasn't just about finding books, it was about reading people, understanding what they really wanted, even when they couldn't articulate it. The woman who said she wanted something about gardening really wanted to escape winter, to think about spring, to imagine flowers. The man who asked for business books really wanted to feel smarter, to impress someone, to signal ambition. These weren't things anyone taught you. They were things you learned by paying attention, by watching Julie work, by making mistakes and adjusting. Retail was a classroom disguised as work, teaching lessons about humans that no textbook could cover. The shift ended at 9. The closing routine executed perfectly. Register counted, receipts matched, floors vacuumed, shelves straightened, Mrs. Kowalski locked up, everyone scattered to their respective bus stops and parking spots, another day of retail Christmas season complete. Monday met school and work, the double shift of teenage responsibility. Wake at 6:30, shower, breakfast of Cheerios eaten standing at the counter, bus at 7:15 to Baldwin High. The school building was decorated for Christmas. Paper snowflakes in windows, a tree in the main office, candy cane decorations taped to lockers by the student council. Classes passed in their usual blur. First period English discussing Dickens, second period geometry solving for X, third period American history watching a film strip about the Civil War. Lunch in the cafeteria, mystery meat and green beans and a carton of milk. Sitting with the same group of guys who weren't quite friends, but weren't strangers, the comfortable acquaintances of suburban high school. The school day ended at 2:30. The young man had exactly 1 hour before his 4 p.m. shift at Waldenbooks. Just enough time to catch the bus to the mall, grab food if money allowed, which it didn't since the checking account was empty, and clock in. The rhythm was becoming routine, school to work to home to sleep, the cycle repeating, days blending together in the December rush toward Christmas.
The week before Christmas moved differently than regular time. Hours stretched and compressed simultaneously, each day feeling both endless at work and gone before you knew it. The young man existed in a haze of school and retail, homework done on bus rides, meals eaten standing up, sleep coming hard and fast whenever he finally reached his bed. Tuesday brought the snowstorm the weatherman had promised. Pittsburgh woke up to 6 inches of fresh snow, the kind that made driving treacherous and walking miserable, but looked beautiful on Christmas cards. School wasn't canceled. It never was unless the snow exceeded a foot. So the young man trudged to the bus stop in boots that leaked slightly, jeans getting soaked up to the knee, arriving at Baldwin High looking like every other student who'd fought the same battle. The mall parking lot was a disaster. Plows had pushed snow into massive piles, creating a maze of slush and ice that cars navigated slowly. Inside, the mall felt like a refuge, warm and dry, and bizarrely normal considering the chaos outside. Shoppers who'd braved the weather moved with determined purpose, as if the snow had made their shopping missions more urgent rather than less.
Wednesday's shift at Waldenbooks was chaos. The store had received a massive shipment, boxes of bestsellers to restock shelves that were selling out daily. The young man spent hours in the back room unpacking books, checking inventory sheets, hauling boxes to the floor. His back ached, his hands were covered in paper cuts, but there was something satisfying about the physical labor, the tangible results of effort. Mrs. Kowalski was in rare form, managing the chaos with military precision. She'd been doing retail Christmases for 20 years, had seen every possible scenario, handled every crisis with the calm of someone who'd navigated worse. When a customer complained about a book being out of stock, she found a similar title. When the register jammed, she fixed it with practiced efficiency. When Julie called in sick, she rearranged schedules without panic. The paychecks arrived Friday afternoon. A week's worth of hours transformed into currency. The young man's envelope contained a check for $93.15. Extra hours during the busiest week, time and a half for the evening he'd stayed past closing to help with inventory. The number felt like wealth, like possibility, like freedom.
But this check wasn't for Christmas gifts. Those were already purchased, already wrapped, already hidden in his closet, waiting for Christmas morning. This money was his, earned and available for whatever he chose. The temptation was immediate and strong. Sam Goody had cassettes he wanted. KB Toys had that transformer he'd eyed. The food court had meals better than packed sandwiches. The young man deposited the check at Mellon Bank on Saturday morning, watched the balance update to $93.15, felt the weight of decision. He could spend it all. Nobody would stop him. This was his money, earned through his labor, subject to no authority but his own judgment. Instead, he withdrew $20 and left the rest. $20 for the week's lunches and bus fare and small necessities. $73.15 staying in the account, saved for reasons he couldn't quite articulate but felt important. Maybe this was what adults meant when they talked about being responsible. Maybe growing up was choosing the boring option more often than not. The mall was absolute madness that Saturday. Christmas was 3 days away, and the desperation was palpable. People moved through stores with wild eyes and clenched jaws, grabbing whatever was left, asking employees if there was more stock in back, paying premium prices for items they would have rejected weeks ago. The young man watched humanity at its most frantic. The annual ritual of last-minute panic shopping played out in real time. A man came into Waldenbooks at 6 p.m. looking for a specific cookbook that had been out of stock for weeks. When told they didn't have it, he nearly cried. Not anger crying, just exhaustion crying, the defeat of someone who'd promised his wife this specific book and had run out of options and time. The young man suggested an alternative, a different cookbook by a different author. The man bought it with the resigned gratitude of someone accepting whatever lifeline was offered. That was Christmas shopping in December 1985. A combination of hope and desperation, planning and panic, the American tradition of expressing love through carefully chosen objects purchased at the last possible moment.
Sunday was Christmas Eve. The mall closed early at 6 p.m., giving retail workers a few hours of actual holiday. The young man's shift ended at 5, his final shift before Christmas, the last push before everything paused for 48 hours. Mrs. Kowalski gave each employee a card with a $20 bill inside, her annual Christmas bonus funded from her own pocket rather than corporate budget. The gesture was simple but meaningful. Acknowledgement that they'd worked hard, that their labor mattered, that Christmas applied to them too. The young man thanked her with genuine emotion, the $20 feeling like more than its numerical value. The bus ride home was crowded with other retail workers, everyone exhausted and relieved, comparing notes on their seasons, sharing horror stories about customers, united in the temporary solidarity of having survived. The driver had strung Christmas lights around the interior of the bus, a small decoration that somehow made the ride feel festive rather than merely functional. Home was chaos. Mom in the kitchen preparing for Christmas Eve dinner, the traditional Italian meal of 7 fishes that took all day to make. Dad in the garage wrapping last-minute gifts with the kind of messy efficiency men brought to tasks they didn't enjoy but completed anyway. Mike watching Christmas specials on TV, the annual showing of Rudolph and Frosty that every kid watched every year. The young man retreated to his room, retrieved the hidden gifts from his closet, checked the wrapping one final time. The packages looked good, store-wrapped and professional, each one representing hours of work and thought and the specific satisfaction of having earned rather than been given the money to buy them. Christmas Eve dinner was the extended family gathering. Grandparents arrived first, Grandma moving slowly, Grandpa helping her up the steps with patient care. Aunts and uncles followed, Uncle Tom and Aunt Marie, Uncle Frank and Aunt Rita, cousins of various ages filling the house with noise and energy. The dining room table was extended to maximum length, every chair in the house recruited, place settings for 14 people. The meal was everything Mom had been preparing all day. Bacala and calamari, shrimp and mussels, pasta with anchovy sauce, vegetables in olive oil, bread from Breadworks Bakery on the boulevard, wine for the adults, milk for the kids. Everyone talking over everyone else in that way Italian families did, volume and chaos somehow equaling love.
Midnight Mass at St. Catherine's was the climax of Christmas Eve. The church was packed, standing room only. Every Catholic family in Baldwin showing up for the one Mass they absolutely couldn't miss. The young man sat with his family in their regular pew, slightly different now because of visiting relatives, but still fundamentally their space. The church was beautiful at midnight, every candle lit, the Christmas tree beside the altar decorated with white lights, poinsettias arranged around the altar rail. The choir sang traditional hymns, Silent Night, and O Come All Ye Faithful, and Joy to the World, voices rising in harmony that filled the old building with sound that felt holy whether you believed or not. Father Murphy gave the homily, talking about the meaning of Christmas, about family and faith, and the baby born in Bethlehem who somehow connected to everyone sitting in this church in suburban Pittsburgh. The young man half listened, the words familiar from every Christmas homily he'd ever heard, but the atmosphere was what mattered. The sense of community, of tradition, of being part of something larger than yourself. Mass ended after 1 a.m. The parking lot was traffic chaos, everyone trying to leave simultaneously, Dad navigating slowly while relatives followed in their own cars back to the house. The tradition was opening one gift on Christmas Eve, after returning from church, just one to tide everyone over until morning. The family gathered in the living room, the Christmas tree lit up, presents arranged beneath it in carefully organized piles. Each person got to open one gift, the selection process itself a negotiation. Mike chose the biggest box with his name on it, found pajamas from Grandma, was visibly disappointed but polite about it. The young man chose a medium box, unwrapped new gloves from Aunt Marie, warm wool ones that replaced the ones he'd lost last winter. Then, bed. Finally, the house settling into quiet around 2 a.m. The young man lay awake despite exhaustion, listening to the sounds of relatives camping out in various rooms, Mike snoring across the hall, the house full and alive in a way it only was a few times a year.
Christmas morning came early. Mike was up at 6, making enough noise to wake everyone, demanding everyone come downstairs immediately. The extended family gathered gradually, everyone in pajamas and bathrobes, moving slowly toward the living room where the tree waited surrounded by presents. The chaos of Christmas morning was beautiful and overwhelming. Paper being torn, gifts revealed, thank yous shouted across the room. Mike's scream when he unwrapped Optimus Prime could probably be heard 3 houses over.
pure joy made audible. He immediately started transforming it, the complicated process of changing truck to robot, completely absorbed in the moment. Mom opened her Danielle Steele novel, recognized it as her choice, understood immediately that the young man had paid for it himself, gave him a look that said more than words could. Dad unwrapped the flashlight, turned it on, tested its weight, nodded with approval, the masculine equivalent of deep emotion. Grandma opened her slipper socks, put them on immediately over her regular socks, wiggled her toes, declared them perfect. The young man opened his own gifts, new jeans from Mom and Dad, a Steelers t-shirt from Mike, $20 from Grandma, a calculator for school from Aunt Marie and Uncle Tom. Each gift appreciated, each gift representing thought and care and the economics of family love. But the best gift wasn't something he unwrapped. It was watching Mike play with Optimus Prime for the next 3 hours straight, completely lost in imagination, acting out battles between Autobots and Decepticons. It was seeing Mom reading her book that afternoon, curled up in her chair, escaping into fiction. It was Dad using the flashlight in the basement, testing its brightness, clearly pleased with its functionality. The young man had contributed, had earned money and spent it thoughtfully and given gifts that mattered. That realization sat warm in his chest, pride and satisfaction, and the growing understanding of what being part of a family actually meant.
Boxing Day, the day after Christmas, brought a return to regular life. The mall reopened, the young man had a shift, the world kept turning. But something felt different. The desperation was gone from shoppers. People browsing the after-Christmas sales moved with a relaxed energy, buying things for themselves rather than others. The pressure of gift-giving lifted. Mrs. Kowalski announced that seasonal employees could stay on if they wanted, working reduced hours after New Year's. The young man accepted immediately. The money was useful, sure, but the job was more than that. It was independence and responsibility and the specific satisfaction of work done well. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a blur. School was closed, shifts at Waldenbooks were easy, life settled into a rhythm of rest and casual work. The young man used his employee discount to buy himself a paperback he'd been wanting, splurged on lunch at Orange Julius, saved the rest. New Year's Eve wasn't a big celebration in his family. They watched Dick Clark's Rockin' Eve on TV, counting down to midnight, watching the ball drop in Times Square like millions of other Americans. The young man stood with his family in their living room as 1985 became 1986, feeling the weight of transition, the sense that something had shifted. 15 felt different now. Not quite adult, but not quite child either. He had a job, a checking account, the knowledge that he could earn money and spend it wisely and contribute to his family. These weren't small things. These were the building blocks of whoever he'd become. January brought the return to school, to homework, to the routine interrupted by Christmas. But the job continued. Weekend shifts and occasional evenings, steady income that accumulated in his Mellon Bank account. The young man was saving now, consciously setting money aside, planning for summer, for his 16th birthday, for the driver's license that would bring new freedom and new responsibilities.
Century 3 Mall continued its eternal hum, the fluorescent lights never stopping, the stores cycling through seasons and sales, and the endless American pursuit of more. The young man worked his shifts, helped customers, organized books, existed in the flow of retail life. Years later, he'd look back on that Christmas of 1985 and recognize it as the moment everything changed. Not dramatically, not obviously, but fundamentally. The moment he stopped being just a kid and started being someone who contributed, who earned, who understood that love and labor were connected in ways both simple and profound. The memory of Mike's face opening Optimus Prime would never fade. Neither would the satisfaction of Mom's smile over the Danielle Steele novel, or Dad's approving nod at the flashlight. These moments mattered more than the money spent, more than the hours worked. They were proof that he belonged, that he could give and not just receive, that he was becoming someone his younger self would have been proud of. December 1985, Century 3 Mall, Waldenbooks. $3.35 an hour, the beginning of understanding what it meant to grow up. Do you remember your first real paycheck? The first time you bought Christmas gifts with money you earned yourself? Did you work retail at a mall that doesn't exist anymore, serving customers whose faces you can still remember decades later? Century 3 Mall closed in 2019, but for those of us who worked there in the 80s, it lives on in memory. The fluorescent lights, the Christmas music on endless loop, and the satisfaction of earning your own way. What was your first job? Where did that first paycheck go? Tell us in the comments.